Greetings, my fellow free mother sovereign thinkers. This is LL3's newest podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy mangroves of South Florida. And today's date, Saturday, July 8th, 2017. Ooh, it's got a little nice and decent summer morning in Fort Lauderdale. And now it's starting to warm up. Ain't that a bummer? That's how it goes. Yes, I am at CJ's Java Lounge, located at 400 Southwest 1st Avenue. Suite 1 to be exact, at the Yacht Club, New River Yacht Club. Right along the New River of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Southwest section of the Andrews Avenue Bridge. Well, I'm just scoping out a few things. Looks like Communist News Network is doing the G20. So people are protesting, and I heard Mayor de Blasio's out there protesting. Yeah, I'm going to make myself look pretty so I can get reelected in New York, even though I sold my city's ass to the One World Order, a la Strong Cities Network. It's how pathetic these chumps are. And he's pro-Orwellian. Yes, right, man. All hail to a police state. Real men think like Mayor de Blasio, right? Come on. Yeah, so, it's gonna be nothing to ranting on that. So, first thing I'm going to be talking about is actually a couple from the, Lou Rockwell. And it's very interesting. It's mainly on President Trump. So let's get the first one going on a commentary by Eric Margolis. It came out today, to be exact. This one's entitled, President Trump End the Korean War. I have some pretty severe things we're thinking about, Trump said of North Korea at a news conference in Warsaw. Doesn't mean we're going to do them. What President Trump really meant that he has painted the U.S. into a corner with all his threats of war and really does not know what to do next. North Korea call his or else bluff. Good. No action on North Korea is better than any conceivable military operation. Last week, North Korea test-fired a new, longer-range strategic missile, Hwasong-14, that U.S. experts claim was capable of hitting Alaska and perhaps even San Francisco. North Korea is now believed to have mastered a lightweight nuclear warhead that can be carried by Hwasong and shorter-range Taepodong and Nodong missile. North Korea can't today seriously threaten North America with missile strikes, but it probably will by 2019. Meanwhile, North Korean nuclear and conventionally armed missiles, and this could include poison gas and biological warheads, today threaten the 80,000 plus U.S. military personnel based in Japan, South Korea, and Guam. They would be immediate targets should the U.S. and South Korea attack the North. And tens of millions of South Korean and Japanese civilians who are at the risk of North Korea retaliation. Half of South Korea's capital, Seoul, is within the range of North Korean heavy artillery and rocket batteries dug into the so-called demilitarized zone. It will take only 3 nuclear weapons to shatter Japan and just 2 to cripple South Korea, not to mention polluting the globe with radioactive dust and contaminating North Asia's water sources. Nuclear explosions would spread radioactive contamination over northern China and Pacific Russia. It already has, when you think about it, a la Fukushima. Why are we even talking about nuclear war in North Asia? Because North Korea has scraped and skimped for decades to build nuclear weapons for the sole reason of deterring a major U.S. attack, including the use by the U.S. of tactical nuclear weapons. Pakistan ate grass for decades to afford nuclear weapons to offset the threat from far more powerful India. Israel used the same argument to justify its large nuclear arsenal. After Washington overthrew the ruler, of Iraq and Libya, it became painfully apparent that small nations without nuclear weapons were vulnerable to U.S. regime change operations. The North Koreans, who are very eccentric but not stupid, rushed to accelerate the nuclear weapons and delivery systems. Almost equally important, North Korea boasts one of the world's biggest armies, 1,020,000 men, 88,000 crack special forces, and a trained militia of over 5 million. The North's weapons were obsolete. Its small air forces and navy will be vaporized by U.S. power, but its troops are deeply dug into the mountainous terrain and will be fighting from a prepared positions. War against North Korea will be slow and bloody slog, even a repeat of the bloody stalemated 1950 to 52 Korean War, in which 39 Americans and at least 2.5 million Koreans died. I've been in the deep North Korean dug tunnels under the militarized zone. A full division can be moved through in only 60 minutes. Ever since being soundly beaten in Vietnam and fought a draw in Afghanistan, the U.S. military has preferred to attack small countries like Panama, Grenada, Somalia, Yemen, Iraq, and Syria. The Pentagon is not eager to tangle with the tough North Koreans. Estimates of the cost of a U.S. invasion of North Korea have run as high as 250,000 U.S. casualties and tens of billions of dollars. Seemingly heedless of these hard facts, President Trump, who himself avoided national military service in the 1960s, keeps beating the war drum over North Korea and needling its thin-skinned regime with naval exercises, overflights, and intensifying bombast. North Korea's Kim Jong-un has played right along, clearly relishing his game of chicken with tough-talking Donald Trump. Trump seems certain he could somehow cajole China into disarming North Korea's nuclear arsenal, but the administration's amateur foreign policy makers failed to understand that the only deal that could get China to disarm the North was by agreeing to move all U.S. military bases from the region, South Korea, Japan, and Guam, and also move the U.S. 7th Fleet far from China's coast. Growing U.S. hysteria over North America, a nation of only 25 million, recalls a propaganda storm launched by Washington to justify its invasion of equally small Iraq. With dim-witted U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley has become point woman for hurling warlike threats at North Korea, even though this neocon poster girl's foreign affairs experience appears to have been limited to the International House of Pancakes in her native South Carolina. Everyone seems to have forgotten or ignores that the North Korea, South Korea, and the United States remain in a state of war. The 1950-52 Korea War ended with a ceasefire, not a peace. The U.S. has been trying to overthrow and undermine North Korea's stateless regime ever since U.S. using military threats, subversion, and economic warfare. Talk of the U.S.-South Korean plans to decapitate North Korea's leadership with missile strikes and commando raids keeps giving Pyongyang the jitters. South Korea's new president, Moon Jae-in, demanded that his nation be consulted before any military action. But Moon's pleas have been largely ignored by Trump. Most of the South Koreans shrug off the North threats and seek to avoid war at all costs. Of course, they would be the primary victims. The U.S. has spent over $200 billion on ballistic anti-missile systems in recent years designed to stop North Korean missiles. Unfortunately, these ABM systems don't work very well. More of tens of billions will have to be spent before these anti-missile systems become reliable. Would it not be easier and less expensive for grand deal maker Trump to recognize North Korea, set up diplomatic relations, stop trying to overthrow the Kim regime, and finally end the Korean War? Yes, I think that'll be the best way of doing it. Because here's the thing. if you're going to attack it with military force or trying to invade North Korea, Pork Chop Hill would be a very good example. And the truth of the matter is, my friends, no one wants to go to war. Even South Korea doesn't want to go, because even if they do a nuclear strike, Lord willing, it will affect the North Korean. It will affect the entire 32nd parallel. Was it 32nd parallel? 38th parallel and beyond. And they can go pretty high, go up along the coastline, affect Japan, Siberia, and to Alaska, a la Fukushima. Mr. President, I recommend end the Korean conflict, end the truce, and let's do something peaceful, and everyone can prosper, including the people in that region, and hopefully one day Korea can unify as one. Families from both sides of that parallel have suffered a very long time. Many of them have, like I said, they have loved ones on each side, and they haven't seen them for at least a half a century. And that is horrendous. And I agree another thing as well, what Mr. Margolis has to say. Bring all our troops home. Let's stop being an empire once and for all. We have our own affairs we need to take care of. We need to clean our own house. Get rid of these bureaucratic central banksters and all that, because who will benefit from it if we go to war with North Korea? The military-industrial complex and the banksters. And you know what? They don't give two craps on what these beautiful individuals in those nations and beyond thinks. So you know what? End it now. No ends, ifs, or buts, Mr. President. Yes, this time I will praise you on some of your actions, and others I will be critical. But make sure it always, when I call you out, it will have merit. And Mr. Margolis and many others will do the same thing. Okay, so enough of that. Next one here came from Thomas De Lorenzo, and same place too, LouRockwell.com. A president's war on the media came out today. And it says here, after CNN was forced to retract yet another fake news story about the Russian collusion, it did what all leftists do when caught in a lie. It played victim. It did so by claiming that President Trump's calling out the fake story, which CNN now admits was fake, and an attack on free speech in America. So according to CNN, publishing fake news is free speech, while pointing out the truth is attack on free speech. To hammer home to the point that CNN, is the nation's protector of free speech. The network attempted to taunt the president on the 4th of July by tweeting his encryption that is chiseled into a wall at the Newseum in Washington, D.C. They apparently thought that this would be a death blow to the president, for the quote was from the God of the state, Abe Lincoln. Let the people know the facts and the country will be safe, Abe supposedly said. Yes, just let them know that Vladimir Putin personally hypnotized Donald Trump, turned him into a Manchurian candidate, and then rigged all the election machinery in the United States to assure his election. Then they will then be safe to know that Hillary Clinton is their real president. I like it. This is great sarcasm. Unfortunately for CNN, Lincoln quote is more fake news because the quote itself is a fake, as proven by several researchers and reported by a Federalist website. How telling and appropriate that CNN and the museum invoked this fake Lincoln quote as their motto. Lincoln was a tyrant and a dictator with regard to the media, shutting down over 300 opposition newspapers in the North during the war to prevent Southern independence and imprisoning their editors and owners without due process. No other president has ever come close to being as a big enemy of the freedom of the press. As historian Dean Sprague wrote in Freedom Under Lincoln in a chapter entitled, says here, entitled, whoops, I did a little distraction there, The Policy of Repression, the first step in Lincoln's program against the anti-war newspapers in the northern states had to start with the muzzling of the New York press. It's page 142. The New York papers dominate much of the nation, meaning that many other newspapers followed their lead in reporting and editorializing on it. The Journal of Commerce was the most influential of the New York newspapers, and it published a list of over 100 other northern newspapers that had editorialized against the war in early 1861. Most newspapers at the time were delivered by mail, so the Lincoln administration or the Postal Service to cease delivering the opposition newspapers. Oh, he was so sensitive. Eventually, they began arresting without due process since habeas corpus has been illegally suspended. Editors who persisted in selling their papers. The editor of the New York Freeman's Journal, James McMasters, was especially heroic in his defense of his paper and of free speech. Consequently, Secretary of State William Seward from New York ordered federal marshals to arrest McMasters and send him to Fort Lafayette. Yeah, Jim, thank you, William Seward, for being a tyrannical Uncle Tom. May his soul rest in shame, you parasite. Fort Lafayette in the New York harbor was at the time it was used as a gulag where political critics of the Lincoln administration were rounded up and imprisoned. You should check out, I recommend that book, The Real Lincoln. You'd be surprised, my friend. Such repression taught many of the other papers a lesson. Criticize Lincoln administration and you too be dragged off to Fort Lafayette. Consequently, the New York newspapers had been silenced by the end of September of 1861, writes Sprague, page 149. But then there were other papers elsewhere in New York State from Long Island to the Canadian border that commenced criticism of the Lincoln regime. They soon received the same treatment from Seward, Lincoln's media henchmen, and were silenced. Then the mania for arrest of opposition newspaper editors soon spread outside New York State. Pennsylvania suffered greatly. That's on page 151. And I will continue on here. Another book that describes Lincoln's 1861 summer rage against free speech in the northern states is Lincoln's Wrath, Fierce Mobs, Brilliant Scoundrels, and the President's Mission to Destroy the Press by historian Jeffrey Manber and Neil Dahlstrom. Yes, absolutely. Dahlstrom. During that summer, Republicans around Lincoln systematically shut down all dissenting voices. Editors and writers of anti-war newspapers were subject to myriad punishments. Some were tarred and feathered, some were thrown into federal prisons and held without trial for months at a time. Others were forced to change their opinion and publish only glowing praise of the government's actions. That's how sick some of these people think. And remember, our last president, Barack Obama, praised Abraham Lincoln. Could we say a coincidence? This enabled the state to fabricate a fake story that eliminates a forgotten generation of editors, writers, and publishers who dared to express their anger and that the Constitution was being trampled by Lincoln. These men were outraged at Lincoln's willingness to shut down any loyal opposition, emphasis added. At the same time, pro-Lincoln newspapers were subsidized with tax revenues to cement into place the fake history of that war that was being fabricated by Lincoln and the Republican Party. Lincoln believed that he had the right to redefine the Constitution, whether way he personally preferred. The formal amendment process be damned. Treason is defined by Article 3, Section 3 of the Constitution as only levying war upon the United States or giving aid and comforting to their enemies. The word there is all important here, for it means the United States is in the plural, i.e., the individual states being united to form a confederacy. Treason is levying a war upon individual, free, and independent states. That, of course, exactly what Lincoln was doing, levying the war upon the states of the South. He chose to redefine treason to mean, instead, any criticism of himself and his policies. This was the basis of the mass arrest of hundreds of newspaper editors and owners and thousands of other northern citizens suspected of being critics of government policy. All of this is the way why it is totally appropriate that the words of Lincoln of all people are literally engraved in the wall at the Fake News Museum in Washington, D.C. And I can tell you this, my friends, even his first inaugural address, his goal was to never free the end slavery, okay? And I read the book, The Real Lincoln. It was one fantastic book. I have to recommend people should start checking this stuff out. That Lincoln Unmasked, but I want to look at that book on the Lincoln's Wrath, because he did shut down the press, according to what Thomas J. Lorenzo's book, The Real Lincoln. And I have seen him spoke when he wrote that book, How Capitalism Saved America. Very good historian. So one time, someone said in one of his functions that Lincoln was the best president we ever had. Everyone in the room bust out laughing. So, to all you folks that think Lincoln was a great president, they're going to perform at the inaugural at the Lincoln Memorial, you should all be ashamed of yourselves for being blatantly ignorant and having a tyrannical fetish. That includes some of the artists, musicians. I don't have to say their names because that would be a waste of energy. Excuse me here. Furthermore, the so-called Civil War was illegal as well. Okay, and there's a claim too in the book, The Real Lincoln. West Virginia never had permission or voluntarily want to become their own state, and the Lincoln administration actually forced them. It's a conscription. And remember the Conscription Act as well with the the Irish uprising, the draft riots. And I know there's even stories too and historical claims that the Confederate States had a Conscription Act, but they ended it because more people volunteered. And don't get me wrong, I'm not, praising the Confederate States of America as well in a lot of areas. It's government, okay? It's not going to be perfect, but it is the most of economics and states' rights, and people need to take the initiative to read more about this era, because the past is today's greatest teacher. So what you're seeing right now, with Trump and all that, Lincoln tried to do a lot, but see, at least Trump, if he's trying to go after the press, we'll call him out on that if he locks people up. So be careful, folks, what you wish for. Don't say we got to lock these people up. Then you have the same mindset as Abraham Lincoln, who never gave a damn about your natural-born rights. Even though he did use greenbacks for the Union Army, interest-free money. It's one of my reasons why he got taken out, because he did challenge the banksters. Don't get me wrong, but a lot of these other actions he's done based on this information, I am not real pleased with this man. Okay, so start doing your research. Don't listen to these bobbleheads every time. Observe responsibly as usual. All right, enough of that. And we'll just hit this one right here. Actually, it came from, originally it came from, what's that site called? Excuse me, I always get these messed up here. Free Thought Project, yeah? Free Thought Project came out. And it was on activist post. Good site, man. You folks should already check this out. This says here, International Network of 87,000 pedophile dismantled. American Mass Media Silence. This is by J. Saropoulos. This is in Berlin. The largely unrecognized global pandemic of child pornography has once again been thrust into the glare of the public spotlight after a massive child porn network with over 87,000 members was dismantled by German police. A platform called Elysium was utilized by the pedophile network, which existed since end of 2016 and was accessible only through the dark net, a hidden part of the internet uncatalogued by search engines. The site was used to facilitate an exchange of videos and images of children as young as toddler age being physically and sexually abused. According to the German international broadcaster Deutsche Welle, investigators had said the site had been in operation since the end of 2016 and that it was accessible only via the darknet, part of the World Wide Web that cannot be found using conventional search engines but required the use of encrypting software. According to the authorities in Frankfurt, they were also recording one of the most serious sexual abuse of children, such as violence against children and the abuse of the youngest. The platform was also used to schedule appointments to exploit and abuse children. Most of the suspects were arrested in the countries of Germany and Austria. A German police spokesman said the Dutch authorities were also involved in the case. We certainly expecting things that are more important to the Netherlands, but at the moment it is not yet possible to indicate to what extent. Surprisingly, the network of nearly 90,000 individuals is not the largest bust in history, as another online darknet pedophile platform called Playpen was dismantled earlier this year. A 58-year-old American, Steve Chase, sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. Chase was held responsible for the existence of Playpen, a child pornography network established in 2014, which had 150,000 active pedophiles on site. The Playpen case was extremely controversial, as the U.S. Department of Justice acknowledged in the court filing that the FBI actually operated the site themselves from February 20th to March 4th, 2015. They're doing the Obama administration. James Comey, woo, yeah, can we say that? Yeah, allegedly, James Comey. Moreover, in a move that left many in dismay, the Department of Justice filed a motion in Washington State federal court to dismiss an indictment against the child porn site. According to a report in Wired, it was for lack of evidence. It was because the FBI didn't want to disclose details of a hacking tool to the defense as part of discovery. Evidence in the United States versus J. Mitchell hinged, at least in part, on information federal investigators had gathered by exploiting a vulnerability in the Tor Anonymity network because the government remains unwilling to disclose certain discovery related to the FBI's deployment of a network investigating technique, NIT, as part of its investigation into the Playpen child pornography site. The government had no choice but to seek dismissal of the indictment. Federal prosecutors Annette Hayes wrote in the court filing on Friday. The federal prosecutor pointed out that the DOJ's work to resist the disclosure of NIT was part of an effort to balance the many competing interests they are at play when sensitive law enforcement technology becomes the subject of a request for a criminal discovery. To make a long story short, all feds decided to let an alleged child pornographer to go keep secret and illegal the methods they use to catch criminals on the dark web. In regard to the Elysium Network, public prosecutor's office in Frankfurt said that the suspect operator of the site, a 39-year-old man from the central German state of Hesse, had already been arrested on June 12th. The suspected operator of the platform was arrested after his apartment was searched and the server seized. According to DW, numerous other suspects have also been arrested, according to police officials. German and Austrian police said they will hold a press conference on Friday to provide further details about the investigation. And I'll say this. If these people be thrown in prison, woo-hoo. Have the body bags and caskets ready. Not the biggest one, but things are happening, my friends. How deep does the rabbit hole go? We don't know. But so far, I'm happy about it because it's been going on for a very long time. Protect our children, because here's one thing we know for sure. Many strange claims, people from higher ups, oligarchs, how are involved in this apparent activity. Their time's coming. It will blow back in their faces when they least expect it. Guarantee you that. In a matter of time. Cool. So, we'll just keep on going here. This is from FAIR.org, which stands for Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. This is entitled After 1,339 Days, NYT Corrects Bogus Claim Iran Sponsored 9/11. And as it reads here, this is by Adam Johnson. as it reads here. In its reporting on a dubious lawsuit alleging Iranian Meta involvement in 9/11, the New York Times badly misunderstood the case and maintained for more than 3 years in the paper of record that the government of Iran sponsored the 9/11 2001 attacks. The belated correction issued late Wednesday night on two widely spaced articles on the topic unceremoniously noted that Iran did not, in fact, help commit the 9/11 attacks. And there's a newspaper on here too, you can see for yourselves. Alright, the correction came after a report about a lawsuit last week mistakenly claimed that Iran sponsored 9/11, something that had not been alleged in the suit. This is an article June 29th, 2017, originally read. The government has agreed to distribute proceeds from the building sales, which could bring as much as $1 billion to the families of victims of Iranian-sponsored terrorist attack, including September 11th attacks. You know, it's funny because they tried to make sure. I never bought it in the first place. I don't know why they tried to make this a law that they were involved. That 9/11 was an Iranian-sponsored terrorist attack. It's a spectacular claim, and one they would radically alter the official narrative of 9/11, just casually thrown into the articles by the Times. In fact, it isn't even something the lawsuit alleged. The case in question was a class action lawsuit for families of all terrorism victims, since Iran was the state sponsor of terrorism. They were held generically responsible. The U.S. State Department maintains that Iran is a state sponsor of terrorism, chiefly because of its support for militant groups like Hezbollah and Iraq's Khalid Hezbollah, whose attacks have been mainly directed at other combatants. Yeah, don't worry, you got customers here talking about a few things. So hey, I'm at a coffee shop, go figure. Even if it has been what the lawsuit was alleging, it's remarkable that reporter Vivian Wang simply took as a fact no lawsuits claim Iran's guilt was simply asserted, and the assertion stood for a week until someone evidently got word it was grossly wrong. Late Wednesday night, the Times quietly added this correction to the piece. Correction, July 6, 2017, an article on Friday about jury's decision to let the federal government seize a Midtown Manhattan skyscraper. It says is controlled by Iran's overstated Iran's responsibility for the September 11th attacks, while a federal court found that Iran had some culpability for the September 11th attacks as a state sponsor of terrorism. It has not been established that Iran sponsored the attacks, which were planned and executed by Al-Qaeda. Oh, really? A similar error occurred in a September 25th, 2013 article in the Times. And it's as if the editors at the Times just got the memo about who was responsible for 9/11, but the week it took to correct this massive error was nothing compared to the close to 4 years it took to update the very same claim the paper made in September 2013. The original article by Julie Fatal, which is September 26, 2013, original achieved, read, proceeds from a sale would probably be used to pay some of the $6 billion in damages claimed by the family members of the victims of Iranian-sponsored terrorism, including the victims of the 9/11 attacks. This article, published in the first year of Obama's second term, finally got corrected this week. But it was basically the same correction that ran on last week's story. Correction July 5th, 2017, an article on September 23rd, 2013, December 25th, 2013, about the federal government's efforts to seize a Midtown Manhattan skyscraper. It says it's controlled by Iran, overstate Iran's responsibility for the September 11th attacks, while the federal court has some culpability for the September 11th attacks as a state-sponsored terrorism. It has not been established that the Iran-sponsored attacks, which were planned as executed by Al-Qaeda. It's like, good grief, man. A bunch of flip-floppers here, right? The correction belated as they were minimizing the defamation of the original articles in a lawyerly manner, conceding that it has not been established that Iran sponsored the attacks. It has also not been established that Israel or Saudi Arabia or the Bush administration sponsored 9/11. But imagine the New York Times framing the allegations against those actors this way. It's unthinkable, but because Iran is the official enemy of the United States, it is not subject to the same editorial standards and those in good standing with the U.S. State Department. So they're like one of those guys, they go, we'll bend over for you, State. Okay. So they say, bend over, they will go, how far, please? That would be the New York Times or the editorial standards, right? Per the North Korean law of journalism, which states that editorial standards are inversely proportional to a country's enemy status. The Times can casually smear Iran as sponsoring the deadliest act of terror on U.S. soil, and is not taken seriously by anyone. Just wrote an article, forgotten about, and only corrected, with no special note by the paper. Almost 4 years later, one would be curious what the New York Times public editor would say. Such a glaring error, but the paper eliminated a position a month ago. Perhaps the Times in-house media analyst Jim Ruttenberg, who spends much of his time head-wringing over fake news on RT, could spare a column on how this happened. This is unlikely since the official enemy, no amount of libel, no matter how egregious, merits a meaningful response from the paper of record. Well. So remember, when you're critical, you're going to make these claims, you better have merit. Assumption don't count. Disinformation is the road to blowback. So thank you, New York Times, for correcting it. And just to let you folks know, this is why your newspaper is going down the tube. It's like these other ass-minded newspapers and pathetic, lamestream news stations. All right? This is one thing for sure. When you make these statements, you better back it up. And this is why the blogs and investigative journalists are tired of these lame ducks or lame pukes. I don't want to say any profanity. I'm happy this has occurred. So, great move. I'm happy this came out. So, remember one thing. NYT, you chose poorly. Too bad. So, next one here will be in a moment. Boom. I just got to do something here. Bam. Sorry about that. So, next one. It's about the whole healthcare extravaganza. You see people in the Senate's office. I'm good. People jump on a high horse. I need my healthcare. I need my Affordable Care Act. This and that. Well, here, continue what was funny. Now you hear, we're going to repeal Obamacare. But check this out. The lobbyists are no strangers on the Hill. So this is from OpenSecrets.org. Healthcare lobbyists are no strangers on the Hill. This is by Sarah Briner. And this is hilarious when they said here, 267 former aides who work for 4 congressional committees pivotal in approving new healthcare legislation are registered lobbyists for clients from the health sector or the health insurance industry, according to the Center of Responsive Politics analysts of Senate lobbying data. And you can see it here, who getting paid, how much money to put into these bobbleheads, all right? In addition, 18 former lawmakers also swung through the revolving door and now serve healthcare clients as lobbyist partners or counsel, as well-known firms such as Antret Fox LLP, Alston and Bird, or Greenberg Traurig LLP. 113 of the 285 lobbyists specifically lobbied on the American Health Care Act, which it says the healthcare bill, passed by the House. Our lobbying data only goes through March 31st, so it's likely that all these members will increase on July 21st. We collect lobbying information for a period from April 1st through to June 30th. Unfortunately, very few clients discuss their position on legislation when disclosing their lobbying activities, so we cannot say which positions these lobbyists were taking. Some lobbyists and lobbying clients disclose their positions voluntarily. One such lobbyist, Mary Terrell, was formerly an aide to Senator Pat Toomey, Republican from Pennsylvania, and now lobbies on healthcare issues as Vice President of Government and Legislative Affairs for Lehigh Valley Hospital and Health Network. Terrell's most recent lobbying report from the first quarter of 2017, she advocates for repealing the Affordable Care Act and replacing it with the House of Representatives American Health Care Act. Her past lobbying reports show a history of involvement with various healthcare issues. Previously, Terrell served as a Director of Community and Economic Development for Rick Santorum when he was a senator of Pennsylvania. How nice is that, right? Another revolver also worked for one of the Senate's swing votes. Amanda Mackey was a legislative aide to Senator Lisa Murkowski, Republican from Alaska, for almost 8 years and eventually became her top healthcare advisor. Before that, she was a health policy advisor to Representative Jeff Frottenberry, Republican from Nebraska. In 2014, she left her work in Congress to become a lobbyist. Now she's the Director of Internal Affairs and FDA for Novo Nordisk, a global diabetes care company. Woo-hoo-hoo. How fascinating is that? God bless the bureaucrats, right? Her most recent lobbying report from the first quarter of 2015 shows her involvement in issues such as prescription drug use and diabetes prevention. She also lobbied on the House of Representatives American Health Care Act. God bless the government. Give me my health care now. Some organizations have taken public positions on the AHCA, and the Senate still under debate Better Health Care Reconciliation Act. The American Medical Association, which represents doctors, opposes both House and Senate health care packages. 3 of these lobbyists have insider connections. Sage Eastman and Lauren Aronson both used to work for the House Ways and Means Committee and now lobby for Melvin Castagnetti, et al. Andrew Rankum, one of the AMA's staff lobbyists, worked for Representative Ken Brady from Republican from Texas prior to lobbying. The large trade association for insurance industry, America's Health Insurance Plans, issued more measured response to the ACHA, supporting some revisions in the House plan of expressing concerns about others. AHIP had 3 revolving door connections to the healthcare committees or members. Blue Cross Blue Shield is the largest insurance company in the U.S., has a similar statement. It has 15 connections. The client with most revolving door connections is the Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America, which is PHRMA. The largest trade association representing the pharmaceutical industry has not taken a position on healthcare bills. The 285 revolving door lobbyist spouses have donated $3.8 million since 2008 to members of Congress serving on these committees, including $1.3 million during the 2016 cycle. Jeff McKinnon, who represents 12 healthcare clients through his firm Farragut Partners, donated $191,400 since 2016 to most Republicans. McKinnon was Representative Joe Barton's Republican for Texas legislative director in early 1990s. And this is interesting. So it's funny because when you look at this, it really varies on the years about where you get all these big donations. Of course, it was neck to neck, like 2008 with Democrats and Republicans. So whoever's in there, is like, get the piece of the pie, That's why I'm laughing. So like I said, both parties are involved. These revolving door lobbyists have donated much more to money to Republican members of the 5 healthcare focus committees than to Democrats, particularly in 2016, which is surprising given that there are more Republicans in Congress. Although many of these lobbyists have diverse client rosters, with clients from other sectors besides healthcare, despite the donations. Republicans in 2016 is striking. Oh, absolutely. Personal donations by non-revolving door lobbyists. So it tells you all right in here. And of course, while a partisan breakdown of giving during the past few cycles by healthcare lobbyists who are not revolvers is similar to that for revolvers. Likelihood of giving is much lower. Of the 1,121 healthcare lobbyists who have not been through a revolving door, just 262, or less than a quarter, have given a total of $2.4 million to members of the relevant congressional committees since 2011. By contrast, almost two-thirds of revolvers made contributions to committee members. Another notable difference, prior to 2014, non-revolvers gave considerably more of their money to Democrats, while revolvers gave equally both major parties, even slightly favoring Republicans. See more data on the healthcare debate right here. You can thank Dan Olber to provide for the data of the story, Sarah Swan and Ashley Balkarzak contributing reporting. And it's interesting because there's the overhaul right here. There's a link for that on all these industries, and you could actually look this up yourselves and check this out. Woo! The healthcare industry from 26 that says total amount shown donations to leadership PACs and campaign committees. Totals cover 2012-2016 for senators and for members of the House. And top of it, I'll just do the top five, I would say. It says here, Mitch McConnell, Republican who's a senator from Kentucky, $3,667,264. Orrin Hatch, Republican senator from Utah, $3,355,661. Charles Schumer, my man, Pinocchio of the Senate, Democrat from New York, $2,715,088. And Ron Wyden, the Democrat from Oregon State, $2,574,215. And I'll just do one more here. And John Cornyn, Republican Texas Senator, $2,480,031. And I could go a little bit down past a few places. You got Marco Rubio. You got Lamar Alexander. You got Bill Nelson. There's a nice little list here. Rand Paul. Bob Corker. Oh, yeah, Cory Booker. So, it's all charade, my friends. Something to look at. And you can look at the list. Just give you a good example of what's been happening. Like I said, man, same crap, different package. You always go to expect this. And you know what? I'm just laughing because everyone's gonna try to get a piece of the action when it comes to the government making healthcare laws. Like the Affordable Care Act and the HMO Act 1973 by Richard Nixon. We didn't even talk about that even from the time of Harry Truman. So it doesn't matter what you with Democrats or Republicans when it comes to healthcare. Someone's gonna benefit, and it's not really us as individuals overall. So take care of your own health. Do your own shopping. Don't rely on Washington, D.C. on taking care of your health plans, okay? Plain and simple. I'm not saying it's perfect, but on healthcare as a whole, but do your own shopping. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones, all right? Don't be one of these stagnant fools that want everything given to you. All right, finally, this came from the 10th Amendment Center. Came out a couple of days ago. St. Louis Ordinance would take first step toward limiting surveillance state. If I'm correct, this is by my friend, one of my colleagues, Michael Mary, I think it's called. Yeah, Mike Mahary. Yeah, he's really good. You should always check his stuff out. And it says here, the passage of the proposed St. Louis Ordinance would take the first step toward limiting the unchecked use of surveillance technologies that violate basic privacy rights and feed into a broader national surveillance state. Alderman Terry Kennedy introduced Board Bill 66 last month. The proposed ordinance would require St. Louis police and other city entities to get board on alderman approval of a publicly presented plan before obtaining and using surveillance technology. Any city entity that determines to have, operate, contract, borrow, share, participate, and or create a surveillance program, modify the use for the functionality or capacity of an existing surveillance program, or enter into agreement involving mutual assistance in which personnel using such technology are shared jurisdictionally, shall first create a surveillance program plan that shall be submitted to the Board of Aldermen for approval before implementation. Within 60 days of submitting the plan, the entity would require to hold one or more well-publicized, conveniently located community engagement meetings at which the general public is invited to discuss and ask questions regarding the surveillance program plan. The ordinance covers a vast array of spy gear, including cell site simulators, automatic license plate readers, surveillance cameras, hacking tools, through-the-wall radar, and biometric surveillance technology, including voice recognition, facial recognition software, and iris scanners. So ordinance will require any departments currently using surveillance tools to present such information to the board within 120 days after the measure is enacted. Local police have access to mind-boggling array of surveillance equipment. It is now standard. Many law enforcement agencies can obtain this high-tech, extremely intrusive technology without any approval or oversight. The federal government often provides grants and other funding sources for the spy gear, meaning local governments can keep their purchase off the books. Members of the community and even elected officials often don't know their police departments possess technology capable of sweeping up electronic data, phone calls, and location information. So right there, as a little bit disturbing, focus on here. In some cases, the feds even require law enforcement agencies to sign non-disclosure agreements, wrapping surveillance programs in even darker shroud of secrecy. Shh, but we're the government. We know better than you. It sounds like the NYPD was about yesterday, right? Come on. We know for a fact that the FBI required the Baltimore Police Department to sign such an agreement when it obtains stingray technology. This policy of non-disclosure even extends to the courtroom, but the feds actually instruct prosecutors to withdraw evidence if judges or legislative press for information. As the Baltimore Sun reported, a Baltimore detective refused to answer questions about the department's use of stingray devices on the stand during the trial, citing a federal non-disclosure agreement. As privacysos.org put it, the FBI would rather police officers and prosecutors let criminals go than face a possible scenario where the defendant brings a Fourth Amendment challenge to warrant the stingray's spying. The proposed St. Louis ordinance would prevent local police from obtaining technology without public knowledge and provide an avenue for concerning residents to oppose and stop the purchase of spy gear. Impact on federal programs. Information collected by local law enforcement undoubtedly ends up in a federal database. The feds can share and tap a vast amount of information gathered at the state local level through a system known as Information Sharing Environment, or ISE. In other words, local data collection using ALPR, stingrays, and other technologies create the potential for the federal government to track the movement of millions of Americans and obtain and store information on millions of Americans, including phone calls, emails, web browsing history, text messages, with no warrant, no probable cause, and without people even knowing it. According to his website, ISE provides analysts, operators, and investigators with information needed to enhance national security. These analysts, operators, and investigators have mission needs to collaborate and share information with each other and with private sector partners and our foreign allies. In other words, ISE serves as a conduit for the sharing of information gathered without a warrant. The federal government encourages and funds surveillance technology, including ALPRs, drones, and stingrays at the state and local level across the U.S. In return, it undoubtedly gains access to a massive data pool of Americans without having to expend the resources to collect the information itself. By requiring approval and placing the acquisition of spy gear in the public spotlight, local governments can take the first step toward limiting the surveillance state at both local and national level. In a nutshell, without state and local cooperation, the feds have much more difficult time gathering information. This represents a major blow to the surveillance state and one for privacy. The proposed St. Louis ordinance takes an important first step limiting the use of advanced technologies in the city. So yes, I do have to agree. It is very good. This can happen, and I give them credit for that because that's the way to do it, my friends. Federal encroachment is the problem. 10th Amendment is the solution. So very good. I'm very pleased to read that to you. And you can hit his website, MikeMaharry.com. He's very good. You can follow him on Facebook, too. So he's really, it's good stuff. Always enjoy his work. And that is really it. That is all. So I'd like to thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share us throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or you're saying something that's interesting, whatever you do, please address your correspondences with decorum. You can hit me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Tumblr, YouTube, Freedoms Network, Scene.life, Minds.com. And what's the other one I forgot? Yes, FutureClub.net and Patreon.com. Patreon.com/local3rd. If you want to sponsor, donate money and all that to me, that'd be great as well. In addition, you can email me at LokiLuck3, which is LokiLuck number 3 at gmail.com, or to encrypted types, LokiLuck03, the numbers 03 altogether, at protonmail.com. All right, my friends. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that the demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.